welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you.
My name is Laura Neumann. I'm here to speak on behalf of City for Champions, President King, President Pro Tem Bennett, esteemed council members, and wonderful staff. It's nice to be back. I love the new software. I am here to speak to support the postponement of the ordinance that was proposed today. And if I may make a few comments as it relates to that. The last time I was at this podium, I was receiving a resolution of appreciation from the legislative branch. You all may recall that. It was very near and dear to me. And I think that was a time there was great collaborative efforts between the legislative branch recognizing the efforts of the executive branch. And that hangs very proudly in my home office at home, which makes me very hopeful today, hearing that there's the possibility of another ordinance that could come forward, because City for Champions does support a vote of the people. I want to make that very clear. It was under certain circumstances that we supported the vote, and I believe there's a proposal where the language will be changed that would be palatable to us and think it would be in the best interest of our citizens. Because even though I stand here wearing a City for Champions button, I believe the ordinance today is far more overreaching than City for Champions. I think it impacts our city and our region, and it's a very pivotal time in our city's history if we were to take this vote forward today, because I think it's bad policy. I think the way it's written currently is bad policy. I think it sends the wrong message to our sports community as well as of our Olympic community. And the language does indeed, as Councilmember Miller states, go beyond the issue of sales tax. And when Councilmember Miller talks about meeting with thousands of citizens, I'm certainly not an elected official, but I am a community advocate and have been for nearly the past 8 months. And I, too, have met with thousands of citizens, both for City for Champions and against City for Champions. And the number one concern of those who did not support City for Champions is if we were going to use sales tax, their sales tax dollars, they wanted an opportunity for their voice. They wanted a vote. And I believe we can agree on an ordinance that deals specifically with that issue and doesn't go beyond. And if I may talk about what the supporters are rallying behind, and by the way, there are 40 to 50 people here today prepared to talk and take their 3 minutes. So one after another, they're going to come forward and tell their own story. I'm not going to tell their story for them, but I'm going to tell you what I hear from them. That most of the supporters are not necessarily supporting the 4 projects specifically. They are supporting the catalytic impact of those 4 projects. And is that my 3 minutes, City Clerk? And so I will conclude with that and say I fully support the delay in the vote of the ordinance today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Miller. Or you want to?
I'd like to have the opportunity, and maybe this isn't the time, but Ms. Neumann, since you're the spokesperson, there's a number of things that you've said about this ordinance and about things that I've said that I'd like to have the opportunity to respond to regarding this.
Sure.
First, that there's a great deal of misleading information regarding this, and I want to be clear. If there's any specific information that's misleading or not true, I would like to know specifically. Any information I have provided comes directly from the official sources. And when you say that open debate is sought, I have to wonder if really it is. Because when there is open debate, it is frequently shut down, even at your events. So if there's inaccurate information, it's been proposed inaccurately by the city to the state. I agree that misleading information is a disservice to the citizens, and that's exactly why I commit a great deal of time of providing actual documents and references to documents when I make a statement. You said that there's a disparity between what I claim and that I'm being disingenuous, because I'm claiming that what I'm proposing is just wanting the voters to have a say, and yet what I'm really proposing is to change the city charter. I don't see any difference in those two. It's true on both counts. One, I want voters to have a say. What you've said in your communique last week was, we are not opposed to a vote, and we support a vote at the appropriate time. So does that give citizens any real assurance and comfort that they're going to get a vote? I don't think it does. So number two is a charter change, unfortunately, is the only avenue to guarantee that citizens will have the opportunity to vote. Period. Those two things are not in conflict with one another. You also said that there's misinformation about who could approve City for Champions. And that any future city council would make this decision. We cannot allow this misinformation to spread. I would like to know when I have ever said this body right now could approve all of the funding that was proposed. I've never said that they couldn't. But what I'm hearing from constituents is that they would like to have the opportunity to vote. And they don't want to leave it up to 5 of us up here who will be strong-armed. I've never said that city council. What I have said is they're not confident they will be given a voice. I am committed to giving them that voice, and council does have the authority. When Mayor Bach was asked at an El Paso Board of County Commissioners meeting earlier this year what he would do if he didn't have a majority on council to approve this funding at the appropriate time, his response was that he would wait until he did. At the Economic Development Commission's meeting last December, and you were there, when asked the same question by the commissioners, what will you do if you don't have a city council that approves these funding streams? He said, I've got 4, I'm going to get 8. He didn't say, I'm going to put it to a vote of the people and they'll overwhelmingly approve it. So this is what gives people a level of discomfort. It's not disingenuous. And then you said that I was blatantly false about the cost of the stadium, because the cost that's listed in the packet, in the actual application, $92.685 million for a stadium, paid primarily with public dollars, but I'll get more into that it's disingenuous to say that it's $200 million. So let me tell you about my math. In the application on table 5.1, it describes that the city would be able to bond $47.5 million from the state's $120.5 million. So that's the real cost. So when we say that the state's giving us $120.5 million, what they're allowing us to do is to finance $47.5 million. It's not $120 million compared to $250, as has often been told to many of your supporters. So it pays for 19%, again, straight out of the documents that were submitted by Mr. Cope and signed by the mayor to the state. Using that same cost of financing, if you did a reverse amortization or if you just did a factor, the factor would be 2.539. If you want to know the exact numbers, the reverse amortization will result in financing of 7.58%. The state recently, in the resolution that was unilaterally signed by the mayor with no input from city council, agreed to a minimum element allocation percentage for the total award. That's that $120.5 million of 23%. If you take 23% of $120 million and then you divide that by that same factor, or if you do a reverse amortization, then the stadium will have state funding of $10.9 million, leaving the remainder of the price tag of $81.76 million to be paid for exclusively with local public funds. And if I apply the same rate of finance that was used in the city's very own application, it would require $207 million. So if that's misleading by using the same figures and the same rate of interest, I've made clear where all that comes from. It is not misleading. You also stated that that is misleading. If you buy a house for $300,000, you don't tell people that I spent $600,000 in the principal and interest payments. Maybe you don't, but when we all have to budget at our own households, we have to figure out what our total monthly payment is. So no, I don't go around and brag about what my total monthly payment is, but when I have to decide what bills I can pay that month, whether my daughter can go to dance class or my son can participate in sports or we can paint the house or we can take care of the yard or buy a new car, we have to look at what the total payment is. So to just look at the purchase price would be pretty irresponsible for this body when we have to approve monthly budgets, and we will, and our subsequent people that come after us for 30 years. So of course, we should look at the total cost, including the cost of financing, not just the sticker price. I think if you had a child going to college, as I do, you would instruct them that that $15 T-shirt that they put on a credit card and pay the minimum interest on will...
3 minutes are up.
We are not going to interrupt while we're talking. This is a discussion that is going to be civil, and it is going to be respectful. Councilmember Miller has the floor, and if you interrupt him, and we'll give Ms. Neumann a chance to respond. If you interrupt it, we will ask you to leave. So this is a very important issue, and we are going to let him continue.
You accused me of providing inflated cost figures. Again, the figures come straight from the application, and the numbers were derived straight from the application that Mr. Cope and the mayor signed and sent to the state. I would also call your attention to the letter that the mayor provided as supplemental information, trying to prove to the state that we had base financing for these projects and committing the city to a source of funds, many of which would not require a vote of the people. You said it was disingenuous for council to not agree with incremental tax financing because it had been approved in other places. Let me talk a little bit about that. Revenue sharing is what's being called the tax incremental financing. In 2015, the city's budget shows $375,000 of revenue coming to the city from the University Village. $3.2 million will go to the Urban Renewal Authority to pay directly the costs of development. So that revenue sharing will go on for the total of 25 years. I think there's 17 or 18 years left. So for 18 years, the city will get $375,000, and the taxpayers that's collected, it'll say Colorado Springs city sales tax on your University Village sales tax receipt, will go millions of dollars to pay back the developer's costs. So that's the revenue sharing. Incidentally, those bonds to make that construction have been in default since December of 2011. This upcoming bond payment is due in December, and we will be unable to make it. And that's for the senior bonds. The junior bonds haven't had one payment made to them. Ivywild, the city will get $63,000. The developer, through the Urban Renewal Authority, would get $49,300. And there's a lot of discussion about Copper Ridge. I've seen several things saying how hypocritical it is for me to approve TIF financing for Copper Ridge. In 2015, the Copper Ridge is projected to get $1.46 million in sales tax incremental revenue. And the city would get that amount plus the base level, which is $32,000. Half goes to Copper Ridge, and it would go strictly to pay for, guess what? A public improvement, a road, Powers completion to I-25. It cannot be used. It would be illegal to be used for anything else. That is the role of government, and that's where I draw the line. A stadium is not in the role of government. A road is. Powers to the interstate has been on the top of the region's transportation improvement priority list for a decade. And completing that project will have economic benefits to our city, and it falls in the role of government, and that is why I've approved it. So we will not see a dime from Trader Joe's for another 17 years, because that's all money that's above the baseline. Copper Ridge, we're seeing an increasing amount of money coming in, and the amount that's not coming in is going to pay for a public process. You said that I'm disingenuous by referring to 90% of city cash registers, and that you shouldn't allow this divisive and misleading information to be spread. I'd like Mr. Cope to answer the question, because when he was in my office, and I have a recording of it, he said that, yes, the regional tourism area was 90% of the city. So if it's divisive and misleading, then we need to talk to the folks who put together our application, because that's what it says. The list of sales tax places that will be collecting sales tax was provided by the city to the state. It includes 9,404 businesses that will be collecting money. And this is where it's different from the other urban renewal areas. This proposed area, and Ms. Neumann says that none of this business would ever have happened without the projects. So 13% of any growth in sales tax would never have occurred without these projects. And so it's only fair to take them from 90% of the city. Well, I would call your attention to the fact that in 2014, we have had quite a bit of growth in sales tax revenue, and there has not been a shovel in the dirt. So if we go back to the same baseline that the state will be using, we would be pulling money out that would normally be destined for our general fund and putting it aside for a stadium, all at a time that we can't pay for core services.
Point of order, President King, you are here to run this meeting. You are not running it. In my 3 years here, the council members have not been able to grill the public when they come up and talk. I ask that you please run this meeting like a council president should.
Okay, I'm going to allow... I'm going to allow discussion on this issue. If you do not want to sit here and listen to the discussion of this issue, it is going to be your opportunity to leave. We have had this on this agenda for a long time. This has been a very important issue. Ms. Neumann is somebody who is very involved in this, and I think the discussion is appropriate. This is more than appropriate to have this open discussion, and I disagree with you. I am running this meeting appropriately. Are you about done, Mr. Councilmember Miller?
I'm close.
Okay.
On this, while Ms. Newman's up here, because I'm responding to things that she said in a very public way about me and about what I have alleged. So I want to make the record very clear and very straight to the people that read this information. What you said was that C4C supporters do not oppose a vote under the right circumstances. So under certain circumstances, the voters shouldn't have that right. And so it's language like that that makes people really want to have something that's permanent in place that will make sure that whatever the circumstances are, if you're going to use the public's money, they will have an opportunity to give you permission. Any future vote should be an honest vote based on the merits of the project once the final plan has been developed. And my question is, why is requiring that keeping people from having an honest vote? What is disingenuous about requiring proponents or any future proponents from a different stadium from being required to provide transparent information to the voters and asking permission to use their money? It's unqualified. It's straightforward. It's quite simple. Phrases like "we don't oppose a vote under the right circumstances" highlight the reason voters are skeptical that they will ever get a say. Regarding feasibility, you said we need to do a feasibility study. The city paid a consultant, Icon Venue Group, $19,700 of city taxpayer money for a stadium feasibility study. Great, we've had a feasibility study done. Unfortunately, that report has been denied to both City Council and to the public who paid for it because of attorney-client work product privilege between the mayor and the city attorney. So again, the people are being asked to pay for something. You're saying they need a feasibility study. We've had one done. We all paid for one, and yet we can't see it. So I agree with you. A feasibility study would be a great thing to have and have access to.
Okay.
The other thing I want to say is there's been, as if it's a factual information about the estimated jobs that would be created. And the over-optimistic projections are frequently being touted as fact. 5,100 is the one that's on the website. It always flashes up, 5,100. What the third-party analyst said was 867 sustained jobs, 867. Dr. Roger Knoll, a leading sports economist and author of books on the subject and a Stanford economist, has predicted 300 to 400 and possibly a negative figure when the substitution effect is taken into consideration. Yet $5,100, if you want to talk about misleading and disingenuous information, is continually and misleadingly being promised to the citizens. The last thing you asked me was you would value the opportunity to see and hear my plan to address the concern many of our citizens feel about our slow economic recovery. Again, you're assuming that the citizens would kill this on site, so that you are so confident that this project is doomed if it goes to a vote that you are saying that I'm killing it. What you're saying is that the citizens would kill this on site, and this does not kill a project. If you bring something forward that the public can get behind and they'll vote for it, it goes on. And I want to answer the question about what my ideas are. Economic vitality operations are not in the purview of City Council under our form of government, and we're frequently reminded of that when we bring up the issue. I have reached out to Mayor Bach on numerous occasions about sitting down to discuss some of the ideas I have that the Economic Vitality Department could be doing and is not because of full-time focus on City for Champions. I would be happy to provide those emails that were ignored by the mayor. I represent citizens who believe in limited government. Stadiums are not in the role of government, and cities across our nation provide numerous examples of where they have led to financial ruin for cities that build, fund, or finance them.
Okay, thank you, and we will give you now plenty of time to respond as you want to, and we will go ahead.
I'm going to let some of my colleagues also have a chance at the podium versus going point by point. And I do want to make note that I don't take offense to Councilmember Miller's comments, because I did write that I did author that document. It was not intended to be personal. I actually think Mr. Miller is very smart financially, and you've done a lot of research, and you're very passionate. I'd like to think I'm fairly smart in finance as well, so we're just going to choose to disagree on that particular topic as it relates to finance. There are going to be many people that come up and talk about Urban Renewal Authority and jobs, and the job information that I have, it's 2,900 sustained jobs and 2,200 design and construction jobs. So we could go back and forth quoting different economic reports. I can quote different city financials. I did it for 26 months for our city, so I'm prepared to do that, but I don't think that's a good use of our time. What I guess I would like to say is, just very briefly, I took some notes. When I talked about misleading language, when I mentioned that, it is that most people, when they think they're voting on something, they trust all of us to use a language that can be easily interpreted. The ordinance that you have brought forward impacts the parking enterprise, a self-sustaining enterprise of our city. I do not believe that belongs within. I do not believe utilities belongs within. I do not believe URA belongs within. I believe sales tax does, because that's what our citizen wants to see.
Do you believe that the sales tax increment financing?
Councilmember Miller, she's going to let her talk.
So that was point one on the misleading language from my perspective. The divisive thing about cash registers is it is about incremental growth. And to an average citizen, when they hear we're going to take the sales tax and give it back to the state, they think it's sales tax that already exists, that we're going to use the monies intended to fix roads and do roads and bridges and so forth and spend it elsewhere. It is incremental growth. And yes, we did have a very good year in 2014, and there are going to be those years. So it is not disingenuous what I said, nor is it disingenuous what you're saying. We just disagree, and our citizens do deserve to have a vote, and we are prepared to support a vote if there is certain language change within the ordinance. And I've heard talk about what this second ordinance looks like. I do not know that it's been vetted by our city attorney's office, but when it has, and it can come forward, I believe you will find we're pretty close to the same point. We do want the citizens to vote if there are sales tax used toward the Downtown Sports and Event Center, but we want it to be just about City for Champions Sports and Event Center, not any sports and event center for Kingdom Come, just this one specific issue. And I think those are the 2 points of difference that we have within the ordinance. Otherwise, we're pretty close. I believe we are. You believe we're not, and that's okay, because that's what makes the world go round. And I just wanted to look at my paper to see if there was any other thing that I wanted to mention, and I don't think so. So with all due respect, if you don't have comments directly back to me, I would like to let some of my colleagues and fellow citizens have a chance at the podium.
Okay, we will let other people come and testify now at this time. We will try and limit our dialogue back and forth, but I felt that was appropriate because you are very involved in this and have had a lot to say, so we will.
And I'm happy to come back if I'm invited. Thank you.